Disgaea is a series with an extremely unique identity. It's known to be grindy, with quite absurd stat ceilings, but the gameplay and overall ways to achieve these stats is nothing quite like anything else I've seen. The series still uses the foundation it built from the very first game, creating different classes of characters, reincarnating them and leveling them up again for more stat points, climbing the item world to strengthen items, beating the shit out of senators to pass bills, and the very basics of registering and executing actions in whichever way you see fit. But each game brings with it a whole slew of experimental new mechanics and shakes up the formula enough to feel unique and interesting, while still managing to keep a high degree of comfortable familiarity. Disgaea 2 plays almost exactly the same as 1, but introduced many things that became mainstays for at least most of the series, if not up to present day. Pirates, mystery rooms, the entire land of carnage. Disgaea 3 forgoes the previous weapon mastery system for the weapon forte system, and introduces even more staples: the abilities, the club system, the class world. Disgaea 4 keeps nearly all of this and builds on it with things such as the item world roots and turning the classroom into the campaign HQ. Disgaea D2 is an interesting mashup of Disgaea 1 gameplay and these more modern mechanics, while still trying out new things, and Disgaea 5 is a culmination of essentially 5 games and over a decade's worth of content and mechanics to build on, and build on them it does. There is so much to do in Disgaea 5, so many tools and mechanics, both new and old, and seemingly endless content to go through. And on top of all that, they completely revamp some of the fundamental basics that have been there since day one, such as the completely new rarity system for items. I remember hearing someone describe this game in particular as a statistical playground, and I could not think of a more apt description if I tried. Disgaea is all about experimentation and finding the best ways to break the game to cut down on grind time and achieve these astronomically high stats. There is no shortage of what-ifs in Disgaea. Between all the different classes, all the available abilities and ways to transfer them, messing around with squads, playing with innocents, all the hidden and more subtle mechanics of leveling items and squeezing more stats out, it's not just about grinding. It's about seeing what works. It's about innovating and strategizing and learning the game you're playing. It's satisfying to get stronger, and you always have a goal. There's always content to do that will give you a challenge at any level, from secret bosses to extra storylines to stronger enemies in the item world. These games keep you pushing onwards, and between the deep strategy elements and goofy humor of the series, it's always a great time. So, with all that being said, what does Disgaea 6 bring to the table? A new level cap of... that's a lot of 9s, one singular post-loot chapter and one singular extra boss outside of that, the fewest classes out of any other game, a post-main story gameplay loop focused solely on extreme stat, level, and power leaps with hardly anything else to do, and a heavily encouraged and late-game required auto-battle system that has you leaving the game on untouched for hours at a time to get anywhere substantial? Can there be a more mind-numbing formula? Let's look at how Disgaea 6 fucked up. It looks like your average Disgaea game, barring the rough transition into 3D, holy shit. The portraits and drawings are all pretty as ever, and oh my lord, this hub world is immaculate. But don't be fooled. This game is as half-baked as it gets. Disgaea 6 feels like they took Disgaea 5, which was all about universe-shattering power, both in its story and presentation, and went, let's do that, but better. And then proceeded to fail spectacularly in every single aspect imaginable. Disgaea 6 goes hard into its stat numbers, absolutely soaring past any other achievable stat cap in previous games, and landing you at a sweet level cap of 99 million. And a pretty easy to reach 1 trillion stats before ever bothering with items, and quintillions of HP and SP. I'm not making up numbers. These are mind-boggling, and it's pretty funny in a haha look at big number kind of way, because, you know, it's Disgaea. But this also makes nearly every single other aspect of the game feel absolutely meaningless, and it didn't really have to. To start at the beginning, Disgaea 6 doesn't have too much content. They totally axed the Kara world, and there's surprisingly few classes to choose from. In fact, this is the game with the fewest classes, even including the very first game. Maybe it's not quite fair to say the game doesn't have that much, but rather that it feels like you hardly need any of it. The side quest shop doesn't provide much benefit other than unlocking classes. The item world is legitimately useless outside of byproducts like unique innocence, not only because it's so easy to get strong anyway, but even once you're as strong as you can be without items, strengthening them is a monumental task that just isn't worth it since you can defeat the strongest ball without ever doing it, assuming 0 stars. And count your blessings on that one, we'll get there. The new juice bar is quite literally a way to instantly buy almost whatever resources you can at a certain point immediately, which normally I'd say is nice quality of life actually, especially since you need to be decently in a post game to use it like that. But given the broader context of Disgaea 6 only serves to highlight the mind-numbing instant gratification it seeks to serve. Now, I have my issues with the story too, but everyone knows that Disgaea is so much more than that. I don't expect much out of Disgaea stories at this point, but it's in that so much more where the disappointment lies. So, what about afterwards? The main story has you careening up in level count until you hit the final boss, who's level 5,000. It's piss easy to grind, by the way. You can get to level 9,999 by like episode 8, which is the first cap on your levels. Once you clear the main story, a postlude will open up. Ah, there's that classic Disgaea post-game story. This is a series of maps featuring the OG trio of Laharl, Etna, and Flan, in which you fight them 7 times, in every combination possible. Flan, Etna, Laharl, Etna and Flan, Laharl and Flan, Etna and Laharl, Flan, Etna, and Laharl. Holy shit, talk about padding. This last fight already puts you up against level 9,999 enemies, and beating this stage allows you to raise the level cap and the cap of how many points can be allocated into each of your stats at reincarnation. So essentially your level and stats all get a massive boost, with your new level cap being a crisp 9 million. This is Carnage difficulty, and guess how much there is to do here? You'd think going through 3 more orders of magnitude's worth of levels would constitute some kind of content to go along with it, like another postlude, but all you get are a set of 5 Carnage maps that solely exist as benchmarks for how strong you are. Each map features significantly stronger enemies than the last, so all there is to do is just keep grinding until you can overcome them. Reincarnating at higher levels gives you more karma, which you can spend to increase your stat points and damage output, and for each difficulty level, you unlock 2 martial maps that solely exist for you to grind on. So in essence, you grind in martial, reincarnate, grind in martial, rinse and repeat until you can clear the next Carnage map, and once you do all the Carnage maps, there's a 3rd difficulty with another 5 maps called the Rakshasa Dimension. And so you do the whole thing again, but with an absolute level cap this time of 99 million. Reincarnate, grind, watch more and more digits be added to your stat numbers until you just can't take it anymore. I'm serious, this is like all there is to do. The only map that even gives you a hint of trouble is Rakshasa 5, since this is where you reach the next level in stat cap ceiling, and the enemies, likewise, are at that ceiling. For whatever reason, Carnage 5's enemies were only at about level 5 million instead of the 9 million Carnage cap. Are these numbers getting numbing to you yet? Now, just having higher numbers isn't inherently a bad thing, but what I just outlined is almost the entirety of what there is to do in Disgaea 6 post-game, barring the DLC maps, which they just bake in to complete. This is one of my big problems with Disgaea 6. It feels like they stripped nearly everything that makes Disgaea good in the first place and made the entire game just a $60 port of Adventure Capitalist. There is legitimately no point in interacting with other mechanics that there may be, because you can just clear Marshall a few more times and reincarnate, and you'll be 14 times stronger. Good luck out there in Rakshasa 3, kiddo! Now, that might be an insane thing to say about a Disgaea game of all things, since you usually do this in other games in the series as well. Usually, you don't need the item world or anything at all, except maybe some innocence until you reach max level and wipe the floor with every post-game map in your way. But 1, at least there are post-game maps and stories to do, and 2, Disgaea 6 is built around this. You don't just hit max level and that's that. For each character you want to make strong, you need to raise the level cap 2 different times, raise the point allocation cap, raise the maximum stat cap, purchase a variety of damage increasing passives, and allocate enough points to your desired stats. These are all natural functions of reincarnation, and they're all bought with a new currency called karma, with practically the only way to get any being reincarnation itself. The higher the level you reincarnate at, the more karma you get added to your total, which you can save up. A genius character reincarnating at max level gets you about 125 million karma, but again, you can't reach max level right away. you need to reincarnate at 9,999, a minimum of 2 times to get enough karma for the first level cap break, another 2 times at 9 million for the next level cap break, and only then can you earn your 125 million karma at max level. But guess what? For the second stat allocation limit break, it costs another 100 million karma. Essentially a reincarnation all on its own. The most expensive permanent damage increasing passive costs another 100 million, and the stat limit break to allow your stats to go past 999 billion is a whopping 500 million points. So you gotta just play the game of reincarnating over and over until you can accumulate enough karma for all of these. Except still no, because allocating points themselves also cost karma, so it's another couple of extra reincarnations for each stat you want 2000 base points in, for every character. Now obviously grinding like this isn't new to Disgaea, far from it, but this just feels more superficial. It's a watered down version of what pretty much any other Disgaea is. It's more mindless than other entries that have you abusing all sorts of mechanics to be broken, such as innocence, items, or abilities, and it usually feels like an uphill battle that you're actually making progress on. In Disgaea 6, there's zero challenge. You're essentially grinding just to grind, with no real goal or purpose in mind, except to watch those sweet, sweet digits be added to your stats. Because again, the post-game is practically devoid of content. In fact, the Carnage and Rakshasa dimensions might as well not even be here. There's nothing to do. They could have just left the ball fight you unlock in normal difficulty and just have that be the big super boss. It would change legitimately nothing about this game, except for removing a 30-hour black hole in the middle of your playthrough. Talk about padding, alright. And then the pain of having to jump through all those Carnage and Rakshasa stat and level limit breaks for every character through like 10 plus reincarnations just to get them on their feet? Again, unnecessary. It's just more pointless and mind-numbing hoops to jump through for a superficial, overinflated sense of strength. And once you do slog through post-game and reach those quintillions of HP and trillions, or maybe just hundreds of billions of your other stats, maybe you'll want to try strengthening an item to get even stronger. That is the natural progression of Disgaea, after all. The new level limit for items is 9,999, with the only way to gain levels being level spheres and clearing floors, which is ridiculously tedious. But luckily, that's not actually your main source of stats. That would be enhancing your items with item points, a currency you can trade in items for. One of the biggest factors of how many item points you get per item is the level of the item. God damn it. And trust me, you'll want to level them up, because the biggest boost you can get costs a whopping 100 million points, and even legendary Rakshasa items, before they're leveled or anything, usually go for give or take 100,000. You need a lot of items. To max a stat of a Rakshasa Trapezohedron, the easiest item to do it with since it starts with the highest base stats, you still need well over 100 of these boosts. Yeah, you really need a lot of items. And the most effective ways of farming these points take genuine days to set up, with the main one abusing the fact that in Disgaea 6, every single item you get in the item world will come with the maximum level you've ever gotten that item to before. So if you level a rank 39 sword to max level, all rank 39 swords you get in the item world will also be max level. Do you see where this is going? The strategy involves getting every type of item to level 9,999. No thank you. And almost any other strategy, especially ones that don't take the same amount of time to set up as watching all 12 seasons of Red Dwarf, will net you a pitiful amount of points for your time investment. Not even just getting a few boosts is worth it, because each one really doesn't give you that many extra stats compared to what you already have, even after the item is already max level. This is a goddamn Sisyphean task, and this game isn't nearly interesting enough to warrant that. This is what I mean when I say the item world is useless. I hardly even know why it's here. At least in other games, strengthening and leveling up items helps you a ton, and leaves completely perfecting them to the most hardcore of hardcore grinders. But here, you have to be a masochist to even touch the item world, which solely leaves grinding on the same boring maps for your entire post-game experience until you finally hit max level and have decent stats. But I'm not just complaining because it's grindy. If that was all it was, I'd probably just chalk it up to I'm getting filtered. It's not my thing, that's fine. I'm not one to say a game is bad just because I don't like it. I'm not just outlining these processes to complain. I want to highlight how watered down and how mindless this game is. And I need you to understand just what you need to do because of the one mechanic that ties it all together. I've hardly even given it a passing mention, but almost all of my footage features it because of how vital it is. And that is auto battle. I needed to outline just how grindy some of these systems are to hammer home how much they built around auto battle and how much it is absolutely required. I'm not kidding. And there's a surprisingly in-depth coding system to get your units to do exactly what you want them to do on their own, with insanely expensive bills you need to pass to speed it up more, which is asinine in and of itself. This means that all of that grinding is essentially automated. Getting an item to level 9,999? Of course that would take eons. Are you out of your mind? Good thing auto battle is here, so you can code your units to target level spheres and clear floors, which still takes hours, by the way, at 32 times max speed for each item. Looks like I'm finishing Red Dwarf after all, baby! Disgaea 6 is literally a game that plays itself, and begs you to do so if you want to get absolutely anywhere. Not that there's much to get to, because the one sole boss to overcome is Ball. There is nothing outside of Carnage, Rakshasa, and Martial grinding maps to clear, except not just one, but 3 ball fights that are all exactly the same save for their strength levels, and each one has one more phase than the last. A normal difficulty ball at level 9,999, a Carnage difficulty ball at level 9 million, and a Rakshasa difficulty ball at level 99 million. And of course, the only one that gives you any kind of trouble is Rakshasa Ball, who has stats of 5 to 7 trillion in multiple phases. It's pretty easy to figure that you'll need to strengthen items at this point, but that's the one shred of credit I'll give to Disgaea 6. Getting stronger past this point is so much of a slog that it encourages just working with what you have here and actually strategizing to beat them, because it is possible. But it's also extremely jarring. You just come to a screeching halt after soaring up and up tens of millions of levels and hundreds of billions of stat points, and it hits you all at once. What the fuck do I do? You know how other Disgaea games have extra chapters or an entire list of extra bosses to find and defeat? Those are for losers, am I right? Disgaea 6 has no such thing. What, the funny numbers weren't enough for you? Pack your bags then, I guess. NIS just wanted to deliver that sweet, mobile game instant gratification without any real substance. This is why a lot of quality of life, quote-unquote, aspects of this game actually just feel cheap. Because the game just feels cheap. For example, Disgaea 5 introduced subclasses where you had to grind to level them up and master them, and they gave you more stat growth depending on the class and access to some other specific abilities of that class. Disgaea 6 keeps this system, except with the juice bar, you can just purchase mastery of every single class instantly with stored experience, and same with weapon mastery. Again, pretty normal for these kinds of aspects to be broken in Disgaea postgame once you have an obscene amount of resources, but even in other games, these are a little more earned. You still have to grind to some degree, and given what the rest of the game is like, this just comes off as more cheap tricks. And the way they remove the Kara world, instead of using that to transfer abilities, you can just make a scroll out of any ability that anyone has to teach it to anyone else, effortlessly letting anyone get any ability the moment one person gets it through natural means. These are probably good things on their own, but it just feels like all potential life just got sucked out of the Disgaea formula with this entry. It's like they went out of their way to make it as mind-numbing as humanly possible, and you start to question what you're doing with your life and why you paid for this. Cheap doesn't even begin to describe this game. Barely any classes compared to other entries, completely watered down mechanics, almost no post-game content, 90% of the game's automated anyway, and I don't think I need to talk about the 3D models or cutscene presentation, they just speak for themselves. The story had some good ideas, but it doesn't really do much with them, and all the characters are super one-note with shticks that get so grating you'd think the script was written by John Kramer.
He's clearly an idiot.
Are you an idiot? Nope, just that you're an idiot.
You're decently insightful for an idiot.
Stop calling me an idiot! Alright, I get it!
I wish I could say I at least appreciate what this game was trying to do, because I usually can, but I don't. Disgaea is a series that I love. With how divisive I've seen the opinion about this game be, mostly being on the negative side, I was itching to talk about it before I even touched it. This series has a track record of the past 6 games leading up to this being absolutely amazing, so I was eager to see just what makes people so iffy on this game. And after playing it myself, well, it takes a lot for me to flat out dislike a game, but Disgaea 6 did it. The decisions it made and the direction it went in is genuinely astonishing. It trades in strategy for a mobile game-like sense of extreme and overinflated progression that leaves it feeling more like an idle game than a $60 console and PC game. I am just so glad the most you have to do for achievements is get an item to max level. Finally, level 9,999. Now I can finally fucking close this game and never open it again. There's the max level achievement, and Cerberus, where's the 100% achievement? I have all other 45 achievements. After all of that, the wish granted achievement is bugged?